Hello, and yes, that's right, it's another SSD test here for the PS5, and in today's SSD test, once again, just like the others, this was recorded way back in early to mid-September, and therefore it was recorded in the beta phase of the software for PS5. Although SSDs are now available for everyone to use on their PlayStation 5 system, and indeed the support of these SSDs and the performance of them is exactly the same in the beta and outside of it, I did think it was important to let you guys know that this was recorded on the beta and not in the full release, so it doesn't impinge the results at all, but I just wanted to keep that clear. Let's begin the video. Hello and welcome back to the next part in my series of PS5 SSD tests. Today we are revisiting the crucial P5 Plus, an SSD we tested very recently, and this is the next stage of my testing. You can probably hear the fans from my laptop in the background ramping up a little bit there, sorry about that. But today we are going to test a whole bunch of new games. Now, I do recommend that you check out my previous video first, because although I am testing completely different games today, that video does include the initial benchmark of this SSD, which I believe was around 5,800 megabytes per second. We also did some transfers back and forth, and I think if you watch this video, as useful as you may find it, he said arrogantly, it may be useful for you to catch that one. That is the video that contains the games Demon's Souls, Ratchet & Clank, Resident Evil Village, Doom Eternal, and GTA. In this video today, I've already conducted the transfer. We're going to hit the ground running. And as you can see here, the games we're going to be utilising today are Borderlands 3, the PS5 version, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order PS5, In Rays of the Light, a PS5 indie title, Subnautica, and Oddworld Soulstorm. I've even transferred over the PS4 data for Borderlands 3, even though it doesn't have any impact on what we're doing. It's nice to have it there, so at least then you can see it and make sure that it's not going to have any kind of problems. So what we're going to be doing is running through 5 games just like we've done before. Our first game is going to be Borderlands 3. And in Borderlands 3, the PS5 version, you can see there, if we press start and go down to information again, at the bottom right of the screen, M.2 SSD right there. What we're going to do is we're going to conduct 2 tests here. We're going to do a full save game load. But before that, we are going to measure how quickly this game loads to the title screen versus that of the internal SSD on screen, side by side. Again, for those that aren't aware, Borderlands 3 for the PS4, the original release for it, took forever to load. It had one of the worst loading times at the title screen, claptrap, walking on the bottom of the screen, and a horrendously slow load time. PS5 has remedied that, but let's see how it compares against the internal SSD compares against utilising the crucial P5 Plus. So let's load the game now. 3, 2, 1. I'm going to talk a little bit here in the background. Again, we've tested this already on a few games, and so far only one game, the Sabrent Q4, was arguably slower than the internal PS5. Every other game so far has either been a few frames quicker or exactly the same time. So it's going to end. Will it end before Claptrap can reach the other side? No, it hasn't. So again, we're going from here. I think that took a fraction longer than some of the other SSDs we've tried so far. This SSD has a reported 6,600 megabytes per second, but there we are at the title screen for these 2 games side by side. So I should also mention I can only see right now during this voiceover the crucial P5 Plus. You guys are the ones that have seen it load side by side, so you should be able to see which one was quicker. So now let's resume into the game. We're not going to include this segment because there's a bunch of connecting to the central server. So from here, we are going to load a save that I've already got in the game here. And again, we're loading into one of the earliest parts of the game, but we've already got lots of stuff on the game and we've already completed it. Not that that matters. So for now, let's go ahead and compare the load on these. So 3, 2, 1. So we're on Pandora here. They're loading side by side. Again, for those that don't remember, the PS4 loading was horrendously slow. But luckily, here we are in the world, and it's absolutely fine. For me, that's loading pretty well. Again, you are going to see some pixelation. I do apologise for that. But again, it should be mentioned there's not a vast amount we can do about that in terms of the encoder that I'm utilizing here and taking advantage of an external capture device. Again, I know a number of you have recommended other ways of doing this, but because these videos are getting compressed at the top, what we're mainly looking for is resource generation issues and any secret loading. So what we're doing first thing is just to blast through some distance to see if we can force the game into some kind of background loading there, but I think we're fine. There's not too much to be concerned about there. So for now, let's go ahead and make our way into the next test. And this is going to be Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So in this game, we're going to do two tests. We are going to go ahead, let's find it on here. We aren't going to measure this game loading from the title screen, largely because it has connection with EA's server. It also has some publisher logos, which again are always problematic. And there's a bunch of stuff in the background that involves kind of confirming a few bits and bobs that have delays behind them. So it felt, even when we did earlier testing comparing this PS5 SSD, not the Crucial, but a few other SSDs against the internal for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, it did seem like it was really hitting delays. So none of these can be skipped, unfortunately. So what we're going to do is load a save to an area of the game, and then after that we are going to be loading a training mission that's got some assets in it to test how quickly the game loads these two different scenarios. So we're getting to the title screen shortly. It's a hell of a long load, this game, isn't it? Just because of all those publisher logos. This is what I mean. It makes it unfair to gauge it. But for now, let's go ahead and compare the loading of this save game. Let's go. 3, 2, 1. Making our way in. It shouldn't be too long a load, particularly because the game is so top loaded in all that loading publisher stuff. But we should make our way straight into a circular meditation spot. And then from there, we're fine. We're in. And we can make our way up this lift. I know it's a little dark, but it will lighten up shortly. Let's give ourselves something to see there. And from here, we're just going to go a little bit further into the game and then make our way back down this lift in order to see the next area. So again, we can make our way in pretty straightforward there. Again, I got absolutely pwned there, which is always annoying. Also helps if you remember the control schematic of this game. Of course, I clearly don't right now, but for me that's still loaded pretty fine. So for now, let's make our way back into the fire there and then make our way into the circle, I should say. There you go, Demon Soul speak. And then from there, I'm going to make my way into a mission where we're going to test how quickly the game can load that up for us. So again, this is going to be the Kashyyyk mini mission there. So let's make our way in, load it up, go into the meditation training there at the top. I'm trying to keep these a little bit snappier than the other videos. I could cut into the edit, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to let you guys, I'm going to cut when I have to, because I think it's better that you guys see this uninterrupted, just to know that there's no extra stuff in the load times that's being overlooked. But I am going to go ahead and load the Kashyyyk mission in 3, 2, 1. And we're loading into the area. That felt a little slower than what we've seen before. I'm not sure how well that will be the case, but we'll have to see. But for now, that seems fine to me. And we've loaded that segment there. We're not going to play for too long. We're just going to sort of go ahead and test just generally, just while we've got a few extra enemies there on screen. Particularly this knobber with a flamethrower. But for now, we can go ahead and hit. But let's go ahead and move into our next game, whereupon it's going to be in Rays of Light. For those who aren't aware, in Rays of Light, indie title that's been around for a little while, that's recently been moved over to PS5. Let's find it there. And again, we are testing this game loading 2 different saves. We're not going to load from the beginning of the game, because even though there's no online connectivity on this, we've got like the normal splash loading times here. And again, there's very little asset management here. It's all delay. It's all just words. So loading up the game from the XMB here seems a little bit needless to try and measure these two against each other. This isn't where the work's going to be. This is actually quite a dense game. And the other thing to bear in mind with a game like this, even though it's technically lighter in weight and resource than a number of other games, I would highlight that this doesn't take advantage of a lot of efficiency in its loading like a lot of games do utilize. So you have quite inefficient resource management compared to other games, and therefore the SSD may struggle because of that, because of large block data being pulled inefficiently. But for now, we're going to load our first save, which is save 3, and we're going to count in 3, 2, 1. And we are into the game. Again, I've mentioned before, this game has some of the worst running speed I've ever played, whether that is because of the tension of the game or because they don't want you to move too quickly because of loading assets. Needless to say, it's still a painfully slow game in terms of running speed, as you can see there. But what we're going to do is transition through this outside area into this building, as the game may try to destroy some assets. And it doesn't have much in the way of kind of rendering and some of the low transition into high res graphics as you move towards things, maybe on the trees, but not much in terms of surrounding textures. But seemingly it seems fine to me. Things seem to be moving at a pace I'd like them to move, if I'm honest. And I'm not noticing any difficulties there in any kind of game loading stuff. So for now, that seems absolutely fine to me, even if it is a bit pixely for you guys at home in the edit, I'm sure, as I move through these very light textures. But now, let's load up a different save. Now we're going to go for one later in the game. And again, this is quite a dark area, so I'm going to try to stick to some lighter areas. It gets a bit tough to see. But let's load in on 3, 2, 1. And now we're in this area. Before we go any further forward, we can go into this kind of bunker type area here. I know you don't know how well you'll hear it, but the vibration on the controller during this segment is going to be quite crazy later on. Again, I do recommend you check this game out. It's not that expensive. It's a really good narrative game. I think, you know, there's that term walking simulator getting thrown around. I'm kind of glad this made the transition to PS5 because it's already looking pretty darn good. You can probably hear the controller now. I will say, while I'm running through this, that we are reaching a bit where the flashlight starts to flicker, and that will make a lot of the visuals tough to see. But for me personally, this still seems absolutely fine here. It's loading well, and I think for now we can make our way out of this game and into our second to last game, Subnautica. So in the case of Subnautica, this is another one of those games that arrived originally as a PS4 game that was upscaled to a PS5 version. And again, we have moved this game as mentioned previously, and it looks, you know, it's perfectly fine. It's on the M.2 SSD. It's the PS5 version. So let's go ahead and load this game. It's right at the start of the game, and we're going to bench test how quickly it loads the creative mode. Now, with the creative mode, the reason we've gone for that is it loads a lot of assets early doors. Also, this is a game that uses a very familiar PC style of loading screen, when instead of a loading bar, it just sort of told you assets were being loaded. So it's percentage based. So I quite like those for comparing, but this is what we're going to go with down here, the creative mode. So let's go ahead and compare them. 3, 2, 1. Look at that horrendous splash screen there. It's like something from the late 90s, early noughties. We've got the loading there in percentage. It's good because now we can compare these in a far more fragmented way against the internal SSD rather than just a loading bar. We can actually see some of the written assets, which ones appears quicker. But we're in the game now. So what we can do is start making our way into the water areas of the game and sort of move around a little bit to get it to push it to create some of those visuals. Again, in case you're not aware, this game largely takes place underwater. As you can see, you're at a massive crash there. You've got your little survival thing. But again, one thing I'll always say about this game, and you didn't come to this video for video game reviews, I get that. But one of the things that always annoys me about this game should be multiplayer. If you look at games like The Forest or Green Hell, or you look at a number of these survival-y games, or even Don't Starve, Some of these survival games are just fantastic as multiplayer experiences with online co-op, and it's a real shame this game doesn't have it, because this game would be incredible with online co-op, but alas, I'm critiquing for no reason. But for now, we're making our way to the ocean bed. We've got all of those assets. It's a big open world that it has to create, even in low textures, transitioning into high as we go through them. And there's a little bit of hidden draw distance stuff, of course, but not too much to be concerned with in any kind of critical way. But for now, let's come out of this game. We've done our low creative mode, and we can make our way into our final game, which is Oddworld Soulstorm. Now, Oddworld Soulstorm, a 2.5D game. Again, we aren't going to be looking at how quickly the game loads, so we can just make our way straight in. And in this, we're in a relatively early stage of the game, but there's lots of stuff happening on screen. And again, we're just bench testing how quickly it loads this save. It should be pretty darn good, but we shall see. So again, we're at the title screen. Let's load in at 3, 2, 1. Making our way in, and we're back into the game. So now we can sort of move along. Again, that felt very similar to what we've seen previously. Don't worry about seeing about how in sync these two areas are. They're not designed to be that way in this comparison. What I'm doing here is just showing that the game's running fine. There's no direct slowdown. But for now, it seems fine. And things are loading at the speed I would like them to load. Yep, for me, this is still a success. I still keep not looking at what I'm doing with that jump. There is a slight delay from what I see on screen compared to what I press because of the capture recording software. And that definitely throws me off when I'm playing these games. So thank you for those people that haven't massively critiqued me during the course of these videos about my ability to drive in GTA or my ability to jump in this game. But thank you. Right, so here we go. We'll come out of that game. And for now, we can make our way back to the title screen and summarise everything we've learned today while we move these games back to the PlayStation. So, when I originally looked at this SSD, I think it would be fair to say I didn't come in with my expectations stupendously high. Let's move those games back. Because it's one of the generation of SSDs that's a little bit more affordable. For those that aren't aware, most of the SSDs that you see right now that can be utilized by the PlayStation 5, even though the minimum of 5,500 megabytes per second sequential read is quite often surpassed, a lot of the time, if you don't have the right controller inside or the right NAND being utilized, that can be problematic. Indeed, if I flick over to Crucial's own website here and we look at some of the details surrounding the specifications of this SSD, we can see that very little information is actually given about this SSD. They're not very keen on telling you too much about it, and there are reviews out there. Indeed, there's a review over on NAS Compares where we go into a little bit more detail about the controller inside and a lot more information about the NAND being utilized. It has to be said, they have pioneered a lot of the endurance, a little higher than a lot of their competition, but not a vast amount more. And I do question just how much of this SSD it would compete in a real-world setting versus a number of the high-profile SSDs we talked about. Crucial is a big name. They've been making memory for years and years. They're a big name there. But in terms of SSD, I would argue that there are better names out there, even if Crucial and Micron themselves do create most of the NAND, utilize the 3D TLC NAND that most people are using. As you can see there right at the top, there's by Micron. So they've got the building blocks, but nonetheless, given this is the Plus series version of this drive, there are just better drives out there right now. And as much as I like this drive, I think it would be a lie to say that I think it is particularly groundbreaking. And if it's at a similar price to the likes of the WD Black, Samsung 980 Pro, Firecuda 530, or even, if you can get a decent enough price, the Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus, I would go for those, because the Crucial P5 is a good SSD and clearly from a well-known brand. But I'm not seeing anything here that wows me. And although it's on the compatibility list, if it's at a good price on a Black Friday deal, go for it. but if it's the same price as some of the other SSDs I've mentioned, or those that I've linked to in the description where we've gone through other guides, maybe give those a look. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, chuck me a like. It helps me understand what is it about these videos people enjoy and makes them better. If you want to learn more or see the other comparisons as they get published, do click subscribe. We have got around 18 SSDs, all with multiple guides being tested on this PS5, all with different games, and we're nowhere near done yet. So there's lots to do, and the beta hasn't even finished yet in favour of a full software update. And when that comes, you're going to want to know the best SSD for you. So it makes sense that you might want to follow these guides. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video.